It's the year 180 and Marcus Aurelius had officially died, and this would mean that the reign of the 5 good emperors had officially come to an end, and so would the greatest century for the Roman Empire. During the reign of the 5 great emperors, the Roman Empire would see a lot of massive jumps in the economic side, in the philosophical side, but also in how big their borders were. I believe in 117 the Roman Empire would be at its greatest extent under the Emperor Trajan. And all of these 5 emperors would be very competent, especially when you compare them to the guys who came after them. So these 5 emperors would be Nerva, Trajan, Hadrian, Antoninus Pius, and last but not least, Marcus Aurelius. When Marcus Aurelius was in his last couple of years, he would appoint his son, so Commodus, in the year 177 as his co-emperor. And of course Commodus would eventually become the full emperor in the year 180. Marcus Aurelius for a while of course tried to make his son more like himself, and this is when I understood that no matter how hard a person is going to try or how bad someone wants something, you cannot make someone like yourself. And this is because Marcus Aurelius tried to make his son like himself, tried to make him more stoic, tried to take his responsibilities more seriously. And Commodus, when Marcus Aurelius passed away, basically neglected all his father's teachings. Marcus Aurelius would actually even appoint his son some advisors, but quickly after the passing away of Marcus Aurelius, Commodus had them all fired. Eventually Commodus went on to become one of the worst emperors in Roman history. You can compare him to the likes of Caligula, the likes of Elagabalus, and more emperors. And after the death of Commodus, a civil war would break out, and it would start off with Pertinax, and it would end with Septimius Severus. I hope I said that correctly. And 7 years after the reign of Septimius Severus, the worst emperor, according to many, for the Roman Empire would come to the spotlight, and his name is of course Elagabalus. I already mentioned him previously. He wasn't a great emperor. If you want me to make a video on him, I will do that maybe in the future, depends on if I'm honestly interested in that myself. Anyway, moving on. Because all the while this was going on, a young boy by the name of Lucius Domitius Aurelianus was growing up, and he would become known as the restorer of the world. Because when he received the empire from Gothicus II, it was in an extremely poor state. For example, the empire was split into 3 parts. Furthermore, the empire was also under threat of a barbarian invasion. So one of the big things that Emperor Aurelian immediately had to do was to fight the barbarian invasion. So the barbarians of the Euthungi would invade into the Italian land. And the first battle he had to do as an emperor was the Battle of Placentia. And this was in 271, which he lost. And so the barbarians were able to march deeper into the Italian land onto Rome, so going towards Rome. Eventually Aurelian would catch up with the Euthungi once again, and he would decisively defeat them in the Battle of Fano. Of course, to make sure something like this can't happen again, he started to look into the defenses of the Roman Empire. For one, he saw that Rome was completely defenseless. So he started to build the Aurelian walls, and they're still there today. So if you want to go to Rome sometimes, I would suggest you looking at those walls. They were built mostly under the rule of Aurelian, but they were completed with his successor. Furthermore, what he also did in 271, he ordered the retreat of Dacia. Dacia was virtually indefensible, and it was easier to just pull back and to not be completely surrounded by barbarians and to just give the province up. Of course, this decision wasn't very popular, especially considering, well, everyone really knows the Romans, very fight happy, if you know what I mean. So retreating isn't that popular of a choice, but it had to be done. We saved the best for last. Aurelian's crown jewel of him being the highest administrator of the Roman Empire. Him being the emperor of the Roman Empire. Of course, the most important thing he did, and where he gained this nickname, the Restorer of the World, was to reunite the Roman Empire under one command once more. Of course, at this time the Roman Empire was divided in three parts, and this would be the Gallic Empire, which is modern-day France and England, and it would also be the Barbarian Empire, which would be in roughly around the Middle East, around Turkey, roughly there. Basically, what happened was Probus was tasked with being in Egypt, but he eventually lost Egypt to the Palmyreans and he was forced to commit suicide. In 2072, Aurelian himself would cross the Bosporus Strait into modern-day Turkey. He would eventually besiege the capital city of Palmyra, and when the situation was getting worse in the city due to the siege, Queen Zenobia, so the leader of the Palmyrene Empire, would try to flee, try to ask the Persians for help, which is very interesting because the Persians and the Palmyrene Empire were actually fighting wars themselves as well. She was captured on the way to Persia. And shortly after her being captured, the Palmyrene Empire would surrender themselves. One down, one to go. But what about the Gallic Empire? The Gallic Empire was, of course, the other country or empire which pushed itself away from the Roman Empire. So while Aurelian was busy in the Palmyrene Empire, he would have to come back all the way from roughly Turkey all the way to France. And he had the time to plan out his expedition to reconquer his lost territories. But meanwhile, the Gallic Empire would have his hands full with the rebellion of Faustinus, and it would also have his hands full with the invasion of the Germanic tribes. So Aurelian and the leader of the Gallic Empire, Tetricus I, would meet in 274 at the Battle of Châlons. And while the Gallic Empire outnumbered the Roman Empire would still take the victory over the Gallic Empire. Also, with this defeat, this would mean that the Gallic Empire would be once more of the Romans. And after the conquests, of course, of the Gallic Empire and the Palmyrene Empire, he would receive the name Restitutor Orbis, or also in modern day English known as the Restorer of the World. Of course, the Roman Empire is quite big, so you might understand why it's been said that he was the restorer of the entire world. Anyway, Aurelian would also push some other positive reforms, like for example he would offer some food redistribution for the less fortunate, and he would also start a new religion for the people, and this would basically be centered around a sun god. After that he would set off to Persia, try to conquer Persia, which, well, the Romans have quite the history with, but he never really made it there. And this is because Aurelian was quite the strict administrator, and for the time you might expect why, because the empire was falling apart, and sometimes you just really need the extreme strictness to make sure everything gets back to running again. Anyway, one of his own men had lied about a very small thing, and he was afraid of getting punished. So instead of facing the consequences, like, well, let's be real, most people would do, he actually forged a document stating that Aurelian would supposedly execute all of these high-ranking people. These high-ranking people in question believed it, and eventually Aurelian was killed by the Praetorian Guard. Due to how short the reign of Aurelian was, a lot of people tend to ask themselves, could he maybe have conquered a lot more countries? So, for example, he was on his way to Persia. Could he maybe have conquered Persia? Or could he maybe have subdued the Germanic tribes in the north? Or maybe even claimed lands like Romania and went into Russia? I'm just saying something. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I would like to thank everyone for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.